Right. Now the water regulations identify approximately 260 persons. Whenever I hear that term, I think of the police term, persons of interest. Certainly we are interested in their data, who collect data and are required to provide it to the Bureau. Now these persons are categorised, and the ones which are of most interest for the IFD revision project are the lead water agencies, which are the hydroelectric generators, mainly because they tend to have gauges at higher elevations. Snowy Hydro, Tassie. They have stations, particularly pluvial gas stations, at elevations where the Bureau don't have those gauges. And the other one is the urban water utilities, the Sydney Waters, the Melbourne Waters. They're the data which we consider will be most valuable in complementing and supplementing the Bureau's own networks. Of those 260 data custodians, we identified about 74 who indicated in an inventory undertaken by the Bureau that they possess daily rainfall data, and 45 who possess continuous rainfall data. Now in terms of daily red data, that means the Bureau's network is going to be augmented by about 350 daily red stations, which is useful, but where the real benefit is going to come is here. There's over 2,000 continuous rainfall stations which are non-Bureau stations. Now that more than doubles, the pluviograph information that's available to us for the IFD revision. In terms of where they're located, we're picking up a lot of stations in areas where there's mines, few in the city areas. My guess is that's an error in plotting, not an error in data. But with the continuous rainfall stations, this is where we're going to be getting additional information. Considerable data networks with the requisite amount of length of record that we need for the IFD revision. Another source of information that we're looking at is historic rainfall data. That's information that's recorded at non-official gauges, either Bureau gauges or gauges operated by other agencies, but information that's been recorded by farmers, by members of the public, or at some of the earlier stations which were operated pre-Bureau, and therefore they were not official records. One of the ones that I find most interesting is this one, and the climate people in our New South Wales Regional Office considered that the largest 24-hour rainfall ever recorded in Sydney was 544 millimetres back in October 1844. Bureau didn't exist. It was collected by one of the observers who set up a station, but they consider this to be a very accurate value, and it's something which we want to include when we're doing our rainfall frequency analysis for Sydney. The only bit of information about this value that I'm always in two minds about imparting is that the observatory at the station, which was on North Head in Sydney, was run by the Royal Observer, and he had some convict staff who were taking the readings, and the person who actually recorded this one was convicted of forgery. So. Okay, we're gathering all the information. Some of you might work for organisations who are in the process of providing data to the Bureau, but it doesn't matter if we manage to archive all the rainfall data across Australia if it's crap data. It just means we have a really comprehensive crap database. And it means, more importantly, than when we use it for the IFD analysis, it's garbage in, garbage out. While it would be lovely just to stick our head in the sand and say, must be good, we collected it, other people collected it. Quality controlling of the data has been what has been consuming my team's time over the past 2 years. It's an enormous amount of data. As I said, there's more than 20,000 daily red stations operated by the Bureau, more than nearly 15,000 pluviograph stations, and then over 2,000 continuous rainfall stations that have been provided under the water regs. And what this has necessitated is that we have to automate as much of the QCing procedures as possible, if for no other reason than to stop my staff going crazy. So what we've done is the Bureau has been, over the past years, been developing a quality monitoring system for all its climate data. And although it's one of the last cabs off the rank, because rainfall data tends to be a little bit more complicated than, for example, temperature data. For example, if you get you don't get accumulated temperatures. If you have a negative temperature, it's wrong. So rainfall was left to last because it was a little bit more complicated, but the QMS system for daily red rainfall is now in place. And what it's doing is a lot of, firstly, sanity checking. If you get a record at Grafton of 1,500 millimetres, for example, which I found in one period of record, it may be right, but it's outside the range of what's been recorded previously at this station. So it's flagged, as it was. That rain event was actually something like 1.5 millimetres, just a few decimal points between friends. So a lot of those gross errors are being flagged and corrected. It's also doing consistency tests where you have co-located gauges, where you have a continuous rainfall station, whether you have a daily red station, looking at the daily red station and saying, is it significantly lower or higher than what we were getting at the pluviograph station? And also doing checks for date shift, looking at a month of a record with a corresponding month at neighbouring stations and seeing, is there a consistency between the gauges? Now, sometimes, very often, you find that there's an inconsistency, but it is a kosher inconsistency. But it's just checking these inconsistencies that have been flagged. Now, in addition to these, the IFD revision team has also been developing quite a lot of software itself for not only flagging but automatically correcting the data. One of the biggest bugbears with daily red data are accumulated totals. Bryson Bates and Neil Viney wrote a paper a few years ago with the title, "It Never Rains on Sunday." It's one of those titles that you wish you'd thought of. But we've all come across it, particularly since post offices stopped operating on Saturdays, that you get your data, Monday is an accumulated total. That at least provides you information with the fact that the data you have is an accumulated value. What is more insidious is where you get a Monday value, which is large, but there's no flag to say that it's accumulated. Was it a really big rainfall, or is it an unflagged accumulated total? So we've developed software which not only looks at the flagged accumulated totals and disaggregates them using nearby stations where nearby station information is available, but also looks at the probability that a particular high value is an unflagged accumulated total, and if it is, then it disaggregates that. Using similar procedures, it's also infilling missing data.